At 7:32 a.m., my phone lit up with the kind of message that rewrites your entire history. Mom, we changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate. Please don't come by unannounced anymore. No, good morning. No, love you. Just 16 words that turned me from mother to trespasser. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how far it has reached. Now let's get to the story. I'm Alicia Cansler. I'm 68 years old. I've buried a husband, raised a son, and built what I thought was a legacy of love. But that Tuesday morning, staring at my phone screen in my kitchen, the kitchen with the marble countertop Daniel himself chose 7 years ago, I realized something that made my chest go cold. My son had just evicted me from the life I'd paid for. For exactly 11 seconds, I convinced myself it was a mistake. A text meant for someone else. A bizarre autocorrect catastrophe. But when I read it again, each word settled into my bones like winter settling into old wood. This was deliberate. This was final. I didn't cry. I didn't call him back immediately. I didn't throw the phone or collapse into one of those theatrical displays of grief you see in movies. Instead, I set the phone down on that marble counter, the one that cost $8,400, the one I wired the money for when Daniel said it would make the house feel complete, and I made myself a cup of tea. Earl Grey. 2 sugars. The same way I've made it every morning since my husband died 10 years ago. And as I watched the steam curl upward in the soft morning light, I did something I hadn't done in a decade. I stopped trying to be needed. I stopped performing motherhood like it was a debt I owed. I started calculating. The kettle's whistle had barely faded when the memories came flooding back, uninvited but insistent. Daniel at 7, standing in my bedroom doorway the night his father died, asking if heaven had telephones so he could still call Daddy when he was scared. Daniel at 16, winning the regional debate championship and searching the crowd until he found my face, his smile saying "You're why I can do this." Daniel at 23, calling me from his first apartment, a cramped studio that smelled like old carpet and ambition, saying, "Mom, I'm going to make you proud." I promise. I'd believed every promise. That was my first mistake. My second thought was thinking that money could be a love language, that checks signed with my careful cursive could substitute for the presents his father no longer provided. That if I just helped enough, gave enough, sacrificed enough, I'd never lose the one person I had left. But here's the truth about unconditional love. Some people hear unconditional and think it means free. I picked up my phone again. Read the message for the 3rd time. Changed all the locks. Not, we're updating security or getting new keys made. Changed. Past tense. Completed action. The kind of phrasing you use when you're reporting something already decided, not discussing something open to negotiation. Please don't come by unannounced anymore. Please. Such a polite word for such a brutal boundary. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 10 years, I'd been the one answering unannounced calls. Emergency car repairs. Last-minute daycare fees. Mom, I hate to ask, but Madeline's mother is sick and we need help with the medical bills. Mom, the property taxes came in higher than expected. Mom, you know we wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I never said no. Not once. Because that's what mothers do, right? We show up. We solve problems. We write checks and ask no questions because love isn't supposed to come with receipts. Except I had receipts. All of them. I moved to my desk, a small roll-top piece I'd inherited from my own mother, and opened the bottom drawer. Inside sat an accordion folder labeled simply Daniel. I'd started it years ago, telling myself it was just good record keeping. Tax purposes. Organization. The kind of mundane financial housekeeping every responsible parent maintains. But somewhere along the way, it had become something else. Evidence. I pulled out the first document, the closing papers from Daniel's house purchase. The house with the new locks. I remembered that day, bright and cold, Early March 7 years ago. Daniel had been so proud, standing on the front steps in a shirt I'd bought him for Christmas, Madeline beside him in heels she'd complained about all morning. "This is really ours, Mom," he'd said, his voice cracking slightly. "Our first home." What he'd meant was, our first home that you made possible. I'd sold my lake cabin for that down payment. The cabin where Daniel had learned to fish, where we'd scattered his father's ashes along the shoreline, where I'd planned to retire someday and watch the seasons change through the same windows that had framed my marriage. $62,000. The exact amount needed to put 20% down and avoid mortgage insurance. It's an investment in his future, I'd told myself, signing over the check. It's what his father would have wanted. Maybe. Or maybe his father would have told me what I couldn't tell myself, that building someone else's future at the expense of your own isn't love. It's self-erasure. I pulled out the next folder, renovation receipts. The marble counter, $8,400. The oak front door with custom iron hardware, $3,200. The stone gate and fence installation, $12,750. Landscaping, because Madeline wanted something magazine-worthy, $6,100. The list went on. And on. Each item, a memory of Daniel calling with another, quick question, that always ended with my credit card number. "Just until my commission check comes in, Mom. We'll pay you back once we refinance. You know we're good for it." I'd believed him. Every time. Because he was my son. Because I wanted to be the kind of mother who could be counted on. Because in the arithmetic of grief, giving had felt like the only way to avoid losing him the way I'd lost his father. But grief makes terrible accountants. I pulled out my phone again and opened my text thread with Daniel. Scrolled back through months of messages. Most of them from me. "Thinking of you, honey. How's work? Found your father's old watch. Thought you might want it. Let me know when's good to visit. I'd love to see the kids." His responses were sparse. Emoji reactions mostly. The occasional, "Thanks, Mom," or "super busy this week." But the requests, those came through crystal clear. I scrolled back further. Found what I was looking for. "Mom, hate to ask but we're short on the daycare deposit. Could you spot us $1,800? We'll pay you back next month. Madeline's car died. Mechanic says $2,400 to fix. You're a lifesaver. Property taxes way higher than expected, can you help us out? $4,200. I know it's a lot. Next month never came. The payback never materialized. The requests just multiplied, each one carrying the implicit threat, "If you don't help, you'll be the reason we struggled. You'll be the bad mother." So I helped. And helped. And helped some more. Until helping became my entire identity. Until I was so useful they forgot I was also human. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the morning was unfolding with indifferent beauty, birds at the feeder, sunlight filtering through the oak tree Daniel used to climb as a boy. The world continuing as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. That text message wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. I'd spent 10 years believing I was building a bridge between us. That every check, every favor, every time I swallowed my own needs to meet his was another plank in a structure that would keep us connected forever. But you can't build a bridge to someone who's already decided you're on the other side of a wall. I looked back at my phone. At those 16 words. And then I did something that surprised even me. I smiled. Not from happiness. From recognition. Because here's what Daniel didn't know when he changed those locks: I've kept every receipt. Every bank transfer. Every text message that started with, "Mom, I hate to ask, but..." $187,000 over 7 years. Not counting the lake cabin I sold to fund his down payment. Not counting the emotional labor of pretending I didn't notice when gratitude curdled into entitlement. They changed the locks. But they forgot I still had the blueprints. I sat back down at my desk and opened my laptop. Created a new folder. Titled it simply, Documentation. Then I started compiling. Bank statements. Wire transfer confirmations. Text messages. Emails. Photos of that Facebook post from last month, Daniel and Madeline standing in front of their house with the caption, "So proud of what we've built together." Hashtag blessed, hashtag hardwork, hashtag dream home. 143 likes. Dozens of comments. You too are such an inspiration. You deserve everything. Hard work pays off. Not a single mention of the woman who'd actually paid. I worked methodically, the way I'd learned to do everything since losing my husband. No drama. No hysteria. Just facts, organized chronologically, building a narrative that didn't need my commentary because the numbers told the story better than any words could. By 9:15 a.m., I had a complete file. A decade of generosity, distilled into spreadsheets and screenshots. I saved it. Backed it up. And then I poured myself a second cup of tea. My phone buzzed again. Daniel. Mom? You there? Did you see my message? I looked at it for a long moment. Imagined him sitting in that kitchen I'd funded, probably at the breakfast bar where I'd once pictured hosting Sunday brunches with grandchildren, wondering why I wasn't responding with my usual immediate reassurance. I set the phone face down on the counter. Let him wonder. Let him feel, just for a moment, what it's like when someone you count on suddenly becomes unavailable. I had work to do. Phone calls to make. Documents to review. Because here's what I'd finally understood, standing in my kitchen with my tea and my receipts and my broken heart. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's clarity. And I was seeing clearly for the first time in 10 years. The funeral director had chosen an unfortunate shade of mauve for the reception room curtains. I remember fixating on them during the service, anything to avoid looking at the casket, the flowers, the sympathetic faces that all blurred together into a watercolor of pity. Richard had been gone 3 days, and already the world felt like a foreign country where I didn't speak the language. Mom. Daniel's hand on my shoulder. He was 28 then, still young enough that grief looked like confusion on his face. Still mine in a way that felt uncomplicated. Mom, we should go. Everyone's left. I looked around. He was right. The room had emptied while I'd been staring at those mauve curtains, lost in the strange mathematics of loss. How a 42-year marriage could end in a Tuesday morning heart attack. How a man who'd kissed me goodbye at 7:15 could be gone by 7:43. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. Daniel knelt beside my chair. Took both my hands in his. His father's hands, the same long fingers, the same sturdy grip. We'll figure it out together, he said. You and me. I'm not going anywhere, Mom. I promise. We'll take care of each other. Always. I believed him. In that moment, in that room with its unfortunate curtains and the lingering smell of lilies, I believed him completely. That promise became the foundation of everything that followed. Every decision I made, every check I signed, every time I said yes when I should have said let me think about it, it all traced back to that moment. To a grieving son making a promise he meant. And a devastated mother who needed to believe him more than she needed to breathe. The first year after Richard died was a fog of paperwork and silence. The house felt enormous and empty. I'd catch myself setting 2 plates for dinner, calling out to tell him about something I'd seen, reaching for his side of the bed in the dark. Daniel called every Sunday. Sometimes more. Always asking how I was, if I needed anything, reminding me I wasn't alone. You've still got me, Mom. That hasn't changed. It was the lifeline I clung to. So when he called in early March, 2 years after the funeral, voice tight with barely contained excitement, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, purpose. Mom, we found a house. We. Daniel and Madeline. They'd been dating for 8 months, a smart, polished woman who worked in pharmaceutical sales and wore heels like armor. I'd met her 3 times. She smiled with her mouth but not quite with her eyes, and she had a way of finishing Daniel's sentences that felt less like intimacy and more like ownership. But he loved her. That was obvious. And after 2 years of watching my son wade through grief alongside me, I wanted him to have something that felt like a future. That's wonderful, honey. It's perfect, Mom. 3 bedrooms, great neighborhood, good schools for when we, start a family. He paused. There's just one problem. Of course there was. We're short on the down payment. We've got $30,000 saved, but we need 20% to avoid PMI, and that puts us at $62,000 total. I know it's a lot to ask, but how much do you need? $32,000. I know. It's huge. But Mom, this house, it's everything. And I promise, once I get my promotion, we'll pay you back. Every cent. With interest. I didn't even hesitate. I'll take care of it. The relief in his voice was so palpable I could almost feel it through the phone. Mom, you're... God, thank you. I don't know what we'd do without you. Dad would be so proud of how you're handling everything. Would he? Or would Richard have asked the questions I didn't? Do they need a 3-bedroom house right now? Have they considered waiting another year? Why are we funding their future when we were supposed to be planning ours? But Richard was gone, and Daniel was here, and saying yes felt like the only way to keep him close. I sold the lake cabin in April. It took 11 days to close. 11 days to erase 30 years of summers, of Daniel learning to fish off the dock, of scattering Richard's ashes along the shoreline at sunset while the loons called across the water. The buyers were a young couple from Minneapolis. They walked through with an inspector, pointing out cosmetic flaws, negotiating down from my asking price. The wife wrinkled her nose at the vintage bathroom tiles, the ones Richard and I had installed ourselves one August weekend, laughing and arguing and emerging with grout under our fingernails and a new appreciation for professional contractors. We'll probably gut this whole room, she said cheerfully. I smiled and signed the papers. $62,000. Exactly what Daniel needed. When I handed him the check, he hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. I'm going to make you so proud, Mom. This is just the beginning. Maddie and we're going to build something incredible. And you're going to be part of all of it. Sunday dinners, holidays, grandkids someday. You're not losing anything. You're gaining a whole new family. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to. The request started small. 3 months after closing, Mom, the inspection missed some foundation issues. We need $4,800 for repairs. Just until my commission check comes through. 6 months, the appliances are all original. We really need to replace them. Could you help with the refrigerator and stove? Maybe $3,200? 8 months, Madeline's pregnant. We need to convert the spare room into a nursery. Would you be willing to contribute? Say, $2,500? I said yes every time. Because he was building a life. Because I was helping create a home where my grandchildren would grow up. Because every contribution felt like proof that I still mattered, that I wasn't just the widow in the house that was too big, cooking meals for one and pretending not to notice how quiet everything had become. Then came the renovations. Daniel called it, investment in property value. Madeline called it, creating the home we deserve. I called it a chance to be needed. The marble counter, Italian Carrara, Madeline's, dream material, $8,400. The oak door with custom ironwork, makes the house feel substantial, Daniel said, $3,200. The stone gate and fence, for the kids' safety, $12,750. Landscaping, just the front yard, to boost curb appeal, $6,100. Each request came with the same promise, we'll pay you back. Each payment came with my same response, family doesn't keep score. Except I was keeping score. In a drawer, in a folder, in the back of my mind where all the unspoken resentments live. I just wasn't admitting it yet. Madeline gave birth to Emma on a Tuesday. To Jackson 2 years later on a Thursday. I bought the cribs, the car seats, the stroller that cost more than my first car. I paid for the baby classes, the childcare deposit, the swim lessons. You're going to spoil them, Daniel would say, laughing. What he meant was, keep paying. We've gotten used to it. The thing about becoming someone's ATM is that it happens so gradually you don't notice until your balance is empty and you're still reaching for your wallet. Daycare, $1,800 per month. Just until Maddie's maternity leave ends. Medical bills when Jackson had his tonsils out, $4,200. Insurance didn't cover as much as we thought. The vacation to Disney, $5,600. The kids will only be young once, Mom. We want to make memories. Memories I wasn't invited to make with them. I saw the photos on Facebook, Daniel and Madeline and the children in matching t-shirts, all of them smiling in front of Cinderella's castle. The caption, best family vacation ever. #blessed #making memories. I'd funded the magic. I just wasn't part of it. The Thanksgiving incident should have been my wake-up call. I arrived at 2:30 p.m., early because I'd promised to help with the rolls. I'd been up since 5 that morning, baking my mother's recipe, the one Daniel had requested every year since he was 7. I rang the doorbell, holding the warm basket and wearing my good pearls. Daniel answered, but only halfway. He wedged himself in the doorway, one hand on the frame. Mom. Hey. You're early. I brought the rolls. And I thought I'd help Madeline with. The thing is. He glanced back into the house. I could hear voices, laughter, the sound of football on TV. Maddie's family is already here, and it's kind of a full house. Would you mind, could you maybe wait outside for a bit? Just like 20 minutes, until we get everyone situated? I stared at him. Wait outside? It's not a big deal. There's just a lot of people, and you know how Maddie's mom gets territorial about the kitchen, and... Daniel, it's 40 degrees out here. You can wait in your car. It's warm. I'll text you when we're ready. He took the rolls from my hands and closed the door. Not slammed. That would have been honest. He closed it gently, apologetically, like he was doing me a favor by making my exile polite. I stood on the porch I'd paid to refinish, for exactly 47 seconds. Then I walked back to my car, sat behind the wheel, and watched through the window as shapes moved through the house. My son's house. My money's house. Not mine. I waited 17 minutes. Then I drove home. Daniel texted at 4:15, "Where are you?" "Turkey's ready." I replied, "Not feeling well." "Enjoy your dinner." He sent a sad emoji. Nothing more. I sat in my own house, in the silence I'd paid so much to escape, and ate a microwave dinner while the rolls I'd made that morning went cold in someone else's kitchen. And for the first time, I let myself think the thought I'd been avoiding for years. This isn't love. This is servitude. That night, I locked my front door, the door to the house that was actually mine, that no one could change the locks on, and pressed my forehead against the cool wood. So this is what family feels like, I whispered to the empty hallway, when it closes ranks. The house didn't answer. But something inside me did. A small, quiet voice that had been silent for a decade suddenly spoke up. How much more are you going to pay for the privilege of being excluded? I didn't have an answer yet. But I was starting to ask the question. And sometimes, that's how freedom begins, not with answers, but with finally being brave enough to stop pretending you don't need them. The Facebook post appeared on a Wednesday morning, 3 weeks after the Thanksgiving exile. I was drinking my second cup of tea, scrolling mindlessly through my feed, birthday announcements, grandchildren I'd never met, recipes I'd never make, when it stopped me cold. Daniel and Madeline, standing in front of their house. Their house. Arms around each other, the children positioned perfectly at their feet like catalog models. The oak door gleaming behind them. The stone gate visible in the background. The landscaping lush and magazine perfect. The caption. So proud of our home. Built from love and hard work. House with garden red heart hashtag blessed hashtag dream home hashtag worth the journey. Posted at 6:42 a.m. Already 73 likes. I read it 3 times, the way you read something that doesn't make sense. Waiting for the words to rearrange themselves into truth. Built from love and hard work. Not, built with my mother's sacrifice. Not, built with money from a sold cabin and a widow's checking account. Built from love and hard work. I set my phone down very carefully on the kitchen table. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I'd expected rage, tears, some dramatic physical manifestation of betrayal. Instead, I felt something much colder, clarity. I picked up my phone again. Scrolled through the comments. You too are such an inspiration. Hard work really does pay off. Flex biceps. Goals. Smiling face with heart eyes. This is what happens when you follow your dreams. Madeline had replied to several, thank you. It's been a journey but so worth it. Journey. As if the road to this house hadn't been paved with my bank transfers. I took a screenshot. Saved it to a new folder on my phone titled simply, Documentation. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I clicked on Madeline's profile and scrolled back through her posts. 6 months ago, sometimes you just have to invest in yourself. New kitchen counters equals priceless. Hashtag Italian marble hashtag living my best life. Investment. Interesting word choice for something someone else paid for. 4 months ago, date night at the Reserve. Sometimes you need to treat yourself. Red Heart wine glass. The Reserve. $200 per person prix menu. I knew because I'd seen the charge on Daniel's credit card statement, the one he'd asked me to pay off the following week because business expenses came in higher than expected. 2 months ago, new gate installed. Safety first when you have littles. Folded hands hashtag mom life hashtag home goals. The gate I transferred $12,750 for. The gate that kept me, the grandmother, on the outside. I saved every screenshot. Each one a small, digital confession of a life I'd funded but wasn't invited to live. The letter arrived that afternoon. I almost missed it among the usual clutter, supermarket circulars, credit card offers, a catalog for gardening supplies. But the return address caught my eye, First National Bank. Mortgage Division. I opened it standing at my mailbox, still in my coat. Dear Mrs. Cansler. This letter is to inform you of upcoming changes to the ownership structure of the property located at 847 Willow Creek Drive. As of December 1st, primary ownership details will be updated to reflect current tax and title documentation. The words blurred. I read them again, slower this time. Ownership details will be updated. Updated to what? From what? I walked back inside, sat at my desk, and pulled out the original closing documents from 7 years ago. The ones from when I'd provided the down payment. There, on page 3, in the section listing co-owners and co-signers, Alicia Marie Cansler, co-owner, 33.3% equity stake based on initial capital contribution. My name. Right there. Legal and binding. I picked up my phone. Daniel answered on the 4th ring. Mom, hey, this isn't a great time. I'm in a meeting. They're removing my name from the deed. Silence. Then, what? The bank sent me a letter. Ownership transfer. They're taking my name off the house. Oh. Oh, that. His voice shifted, still friendly, but now edged with impatience. Mom, calm down. It's just for tax purposes. Tax purposes. Yeah. Our accountant said it would be better for estate planning and some LLC stuff if we simplified the ownership structure. It's totally routine. I looked at the letter again. At the careful language. Updated to reflect current tax and title documentation. You took my name off the deed. We're not taking anything. We're just restructuring. Look, you'll still be protected. We're setting up a trust. You'll be listed there. A trust you control. Mom. His voice took on that particular tone, patient, patronizing, the voice you use with someone who's being unreasonable. You're overreacting. This is standard financial planning. Ask anyone. In the background, I heard Madeline's voice, muffled but distinct. Is that your mother? Tell her we'll call her back. Not we'll explain. Not we'll reassure her. Just we'll call her back. Like I was a telemarketer. Daniel, that house is 1/3 mine. Legally. And you'll be compensated. Eventually. When we sell or refinance. But right now, this is what makes sense for our family's financial future. Our family. Not our family including you. I need to think about this, I said. There's nothing to think about. The papers are already filed. It's done, Mom. I thought you'd understand. You've always understood. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, phone in hand, listening to the dial tone. The papers are already filed. They hadn't asked. They'd informed. There's a special kind of violation in that, being erased from something you built and only being told about it after the fact. I spent the next 2 hours pulling every document I had. Bank statements going back 7 years. Wire transfer confirmations. Copies of checks. The email where Daniel had sent me the appliance invoice. The text requesting help with Emma's medical bills. The casual, "Hey Mom, could you Venmo $600 for Jackson's birthday party?" message from last month. I organized them chronologically. Created a spreadsheet with dates, amounts, and purposes. The total came to $187,624. $187,624. Not including the lake cabin sale, which had been a gift. Not including the smaller amounts, groceries I'd bought when I visited, birthday presents, the times I'd filled up Daniel's gas tank because he'd mentioned being short until payday. Just the documented, verifiable transfers. I saved the spreadsheet. Printed it. Filed it in a new folder labeled Proof. Then I pulled out the oldest document I had, the original trust papers from when Richard and I had set up our estate. We'd been so careful. Richard had insisted on it, even though we were young and death felt impossibly far away. "I want to make sure you're protected," he'd said, signing his name in his careful, slanted handwriting. "No matter what happens to me, you're covered. That's a promise." I traced my finger over his signature. He'd protected me. Even from the grave, he'd tried. I just hadn't protected myself. That evening, my phone rang. Not Daniel. His uncle, Richard's younger brother, Henry. "Alicia? Do you have a minute?" Henry lived 2 states away, but we'd stayed in touch. Christmas cards. Occasional phone calls. The kind of peripheral family relationship that persists on habit and old affection. Of course. "How are you?" "I'm fine. But I'm calling because, well, I saw Daniel's Facebook post. The one about the house." My stomach tightened. "You're on Facebook?" My daughter insists. Makes me look at pictures of the grandkids. He paused. "The thing is, Alicia, that caption bothered me. Built from love and hard work. I remember when Daniel bought that place. I remember what you sold to help him." I didn't respond. Couldn't. "I also remember," Henry continued, his voice gentle but firm, "that Richard set up co-ownership protection. When he redid the estate papers after Daniel was born, he made sure that any major property you contributed to would maintain your legal stake. It was his way of protecting you if, God forbid, Daniel ever got himself into financial trouble or made poor decisions." "He did?" You were listed as co-owner with equity stake on any property purchases you contributed more than 20% toward. Richard was very specific about that. He wanted to make sure that if you helped Daniel, you weren't just giving money away, you were investing in something that would protect you too. My hand tightened on the phone. They're removing my name from the deed. Silence. Then, without your consent? They said it was already filed. I heard Henry breathe in sharply. That's not legal. Not without your signature. Alicia, do you still have those original trust documents? The ones Richard signed? Yes. I think you should talk to a lawyer. Today, if possible. Because if what I remember is correct, what Daniel's doing isn't just unethical. It's fraud. I called a lawyer that evening. Left a message. She called back the next morning, listened to my story, and asked me to send the documents. 48 hours later, she called back. Mrs. Cansler, I've reviewed everything. Your late husband's trust documents are very clear. You maintain legal co-ownership of any property where you contributed more than 20% of the acquisition cost. Daniel can't remove you from the deed without your explicit written consent and notarized signature. But he did. Then he did it fraudulently. We can challenge this. We can also file for immediate restoration of ownership status and possibly pursue recovery of your financial contributions. How long would that take? Months. Maybe longer. It depends on whether Daniel contests. I thought about it. About lawyers and courtrooms and family drama spilling into the public record. Then I thought about that Facebook post. Built from love and hard work. And I thought about Daniel's voice. The papers are already filed. It's done, Mom. Let's do it, I said. Understood. I'll prepare the initial filing. But Mrs. Cansler? I have to ask, are you prepared for this to damage your relationship with your son? Because once we file, there's no going back quietly. I looked at the folder on my desk. Proof. Inside, 187,000 reasons why the relationship was already damaged. I just hadn't been willing to see it. File the papers, I said. The relationship ended the day he changed the locks on a house I helped him build. I'm just making it official. That night, I opened the folder labeled Proof one more time. Each document told a story. Of a mother trying to buy belonging. Of a son learning that love could be commodified. Of a family that confused generosity with obligation. One document at a time, I was reclaiming my narrative. They'd written me out of their story. But I was about to write myself back in, not as the benefactor, not as the ATM, not as the woman waiting patiently outside locked doors. As the co-owner. The investor. The woman who'd built their dream and was now demanding her equity back. They wanted to erase me from the deed. I was about to remind them that paperwork cuts both ways. The invitation came via text on a Friday afternoon, 2 weeks after I'd retained the lawyer. Mom, why don't you come for dinner Sunday? 6 p.m. We need to talk. Clear the air. Maddie's making your favorite. Red heart. My favorite. As if she knew what that was. As if we'd ever had that kind of conversation. I stared at the message for a long moment, weighing the words he'd chosen. Clear the air. That phrase people use when they mean, let us explain why you're wrong to be upset. I should have said no. But there was a part of me, the part that still remembered Daniel at 7, at 16, at 23, that wanted to believe this was an olive branch. A genuine attempt at reconciliation. So I replied, I'll be there. I arrived at 6:03 p.m., deliberately late enough to avoid the awkwardness of being early, but not so late as to seem passive-aggressive. I'd dressed carefully, navy slacks, a cream silk blouse, my pearls. Armor disguised as Sunday dinner attire. Daniel opened the door with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Mom. You came. You invited me. Right. Yeah. Come in. The house smelled like roasted chicken and something herbal, rosemary, maybe. The lights were warm, the table already set. Through the dining room doorway, I could see movement, hear voices. Multiple voices. Is someone else here? I asked. Daniel's smile tightened. Just Maddie's mom. She's been helping with the kids today, and we thought, family dinner. The more the merrier. Family dinner. We walked into the dining room, and I saw her immediately, Patricia Whitmore, Madeline's mother, sitting in my chair. Not just any chair. The chair at the corner of the table, the one I'd sat in every time I'd visited. The one with the view of the kitchen, close enough to help serve but positioned like I belonged. Patricia looked up and smiled, polite, measured, the smile of someone who'd already won a game I didn't know we were playing. Alicia. How lovely to see you. Patricia. I looked at the table. 7 places set. Patricia at my usual spot. Madeline at the head. Daniel to her right. 2 booster seats for Emma and Jackson. And then, at the far end, almost separate from the family cluster, a single place setting. For me. Mom, you're down there, Daniel said, gesturing. I thought you'd want the quieter end. You mentioned your hearing being sensitive to the kids' noise last time. I'd never said that. Not once. But I walked to my assigned seat and sat down. Madeline emerged from the kitchen carrying a platter. Alicia. So glad you could make it. I made chicken piccata. I remember you mentioning you liked it. I'd never mentioned it. I didn't particularly like it. But I smiled. How thoughtful. Dinner was a performance. Madeline and Patricia talked about the children's activities, piano lessons, soccer practice, the new daycare that was so much better than the last one. They spoke in a language of shared intimacy, finishing each other's sentences, laughing at inside jokes. Daniel participated peripherally, mostly focused on cutting Jackson's chicken into smaller pieces. I sat at my end of the table, eating food I didn't want, watching a family I didn't belong to. Alicia, Patricia said eventually, her voice carrying that particular tone of polite inquiry that's really a probe. Daniel mentioned you've been going through some stress lately. I hope everything's all right. Everyone looked at me. I'm fine, I said evenly. Just handling some legal matters. Legal matters? Madeline's eyebrows rose with performative concern. Nothing serious, I hope. Just reviewing some property documents. Making sure everything's properly filed. The temperature in the room dropped 5 degrees. Daniel cleared his throat. Mom's been worried about some paperwork. We've tried to explain it's all routine, but... I'm sure it's confusing, Patricia interrupted smoothly. Financial things can be so complex. That's why it's good to have younger people handle it. Fresh eyes, current knowledge. She smiled at me. You've done enough for this house, Alicia. You can relax now. Let Daniel and Madeline take the reins. You've done enough. Translation, you've served your purpose. Actually, I said, setting down my fork with careful precision, I've been quite involved in financial management for 40 years. I ran a household, managed investments, and built a comfortable life with my late husband. I'm not confused. I'm informed. Silence. Madeline recovered first. Of course you are. Patricia just meant. I know what she meant. The table went still. Emma dropped her spoon with a clatter. Daniel stood abruptly. Mom, can I talk to you in the kitchen? It wasn't a question. In the kitchen, he closed the door and turned to me, face flushed. What are you doing? Having dinner. As invited. You're being hostile. I'm being honest. There's a difference. Patricia was just trying to be nice. She's family. So am I, theoretically. Mom. He rubbed his face, suddenly looking exhausted. This is exactly what I was worried about. You're making this weird. We invited you to smooth things over, to move forward, and I'm what? Not playing along? Not pretending I don't notice I've been seated at the children's table? Not pretending your mother-in-law isn't sitting in my chair? It's not your chair. It's just a chair. Is it? Because everything else in this house seems to have very specific ownership. Except when it comes to what I contributed. Then suddenly it's all communal. He stared at me. Are you really going to do this? Hire lawyers and make this ugly? I'm making it ugly. Daniel, you removed my name from the deed without telling me. You've been erasing me piece by piece for months, and when I finally notice, I'm the villain. We're trying to build a life here. A life that's ours. And you hover. You want credit for everything. You want to be consulted on every decision. I want to be acknowledged. There's a difference. You are acknowledged. We say thank you. What more do you want? What I wanted was so far beyond his comprehension that I didn't know how to explain it. I wanted to be seen. To be valued as more than a checkbook. To be included in the family I'd helped build. But you can't make someone love you the way you need to be loved. You can only stop accepting the way they don't. I want you to be honest, I said quietly. Just once. Tell me the truth, Daniel. Do you see me as your mother? Or as a source of funding you're obligated to tolerate? He opened his mouth. Closed it. Looked away. And in that silence, I had my answer. I left without saying goodbye to the table. Walked through the living room, past the photos on the mantel, the ones that included me less and less with each passing year, and let myself out the front door. The oak door. The $3,000 door. I sat in my car in their driveway, key in the ignition but not turning it. The evening was cool, and through the dining room window, the window I'd paid to replace after a storm 2 years ago, I could see them. The window was open a crack. Their voices carried. Overreacted, Daniel was saying. I tried to be gentle, but she just doesn't get it. Patricia, she means well, dear. But there comes a time when parents need to step back. Madeline, the problem is she thinks money buys a seat at the table. That every check comes with voting rights. She's just. Daniel sighed. She's too involved. In everything. Our finances, our decisions, the kids. I love her, but she's suffocating. She's lonely, Patricia said, not unkindly. Widows often are. But that's not your responsibility to fix. I know. I just wish she'd understand, she's not really part of our home anymore. She just sponsors it. The words hit like ice water. She just sponsors it. I'd heard enough. I started the car, engine smooth and quiet, another thing Daniel had asked me to pay for last year when his transmission failed, and I drove away. I didn't cry. Tears would have required a level of surprise I no longer felt. Instead, I drove home in perfect, crystalline silence. When I walked into my house, my name on the deed, my furniture, my choices, I went straight to my desk. I opened my laptop. Created a new document. Titled it, Complete Financial Accounting, Alicia Cansler vs. Daniel Cansler, 2015 present. Then I started typing. Every wire transfer. Every check. Every cash withdrawal with Daniel, emergency, scrawled in my ledger. Every Venmo payment. Every credit card charge I'd covered. I worked methodically, cross-referencing bank statements with my calendar, reconstructing the narrative of 10 years of generosity that had been mistaken for weakness. The lake cabin sale, $62,000. The down payment contribution, $32,000. Renovations, $30,450. Medical and childcare, $18,600. Emergency loans, $27,800. Monthly supplements, $16,774. And on. And on. Hours passed. My tea went cold. My neck stiffened. But I kept typing. At some point, I caught my reflection in the darkened window, a 68-year-old woman in pearls, backlit by her computer screen, constructing a fortress out of receipts. My pearls gleamed like armor. Around 2 a.m., I saved the document. 147 pages. Every transaction documented, categorized, annotated with context. The total, $187,624. Then I did something that surprised me. I smiled. Not from happiness. From power. Because here's what Daniel didn't understand. I wasn't just a sponsor. I was an investor. And investors can pull their funding. They'd treated me like a passive resource. Reliable. Inexhaustible. Convenient. They'd forgotten that even the deepest well runs dry. And mine had just run out. I opened a new email. Attached the document. Addressed it to my lawyer with a simple subject line, complete documentation, ready to proceed. Before I sent it, I typed one final note. If they think I'm just a sponsor, they'll soon learn sponsors can cancel. I hit send. Then I took off my pearls, placed them in their velvet case, and went to bed. For the first time in 10 years, I slept through the night without waking. Without checking my phone to see if Daniel needed anything. Without wondering if I'd done enough. Because I had done enough. More than enough. And now it was time to stop. The invitation arrived in my mailbox 6 weeks after the disastrous dinner. Heavy cardstock. Emerald green with gold embossing. The kind of invitation that announces its own importance before you even open it. You're invited to celebrate Madeline's 40th birthday. Saturday, March 15th, 7 p.m. The Riverside Estate. Cocktail attire. Inside, a smaller card in Madeline's careful script, family and close friends only. Let's make this night unforgettable. I wasn't supposed to come. That much was clear. The invitation had been a courtesy, the kind you send to avoid looking petty, fully expecting the recipient to understand they're not actually welcome. But I'd stopped caring about unspoken expectations. I RSVP'd yes. The Riverside Estate was lit like a jewelry box when I arrived at 7:47 p.m., late enough that the party would be in full swing, but early enough that I wouldn't miss the main event. Valet parking. A red carpet leading to glass doors wrapped in emerald ribbon. Through the windows, I could see the party, at least 60 people in cocktail attire, champagne flutes catching the light, a string quartet in the corner. Madeline had outdone herself. I wondered who'd paid for it. I stepped out of my car wearing a navy dress I'd bought specifically for tonight. Fitted, elegant, expensive. My pearls, the ones Richard had given me for our 20th anniversary, gleamed at my throat. I looked like money. Old money. Quiet money. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that built the house the birthday girl lived in. The valet took my keys. I walked through those glass doors like I owned them. The room went quiet in ripples. First the people nearest the entrance, their conversations trailing off as they registered my presence. Then the silence spread, a stone dropped in water, until the entire room was staring. Madeline saw me from across the floor. Her smile froze, champagne glass suspended halfway to her lips. Daniel materialized at my elbow within seconds. Mom. His voice was low, urgent. What are you doing here? I was invited. I showed him the card, still in my clutch. See? Family and close friends. You know what I mean. This isn't, we didn't think you'd actually. Didn't think I'd actually come? Or didn't want me to? His jaw tightened. Mom, please. Not tonight. This is Maddie's night. I know. That's why I'm here. I patted his arm gently. Don't worry, darling. I won't cause a scene. I walked past him before he could respond. Madeline intercepted me near the bar, Patricia flanking her like a designer-clad bodyguard. Alicia. Madeline's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. What a surprise. Happy birthday, Madeline. 40 looks wonderful on you. Thank you. I wasn't sure you'd make it. Wouldn't miss it. Not after everything we've been through together. I looked around the room, the ice sculptures, the towers of champagne, the elaborate floral arrangements. This is quite the production. You've really pulled out all the stops. Well, you only turned 40 once. She sipped her champagne, eyes never leaving mine. We wanted it to be memorable. Oh, it will be, I said. I promise you that. Something in my tone made her smile falter. At 8:15, the lights dimmed for toasts. Daniel moved toward the small stage where a microphone stood ready. But I moved faster. My heels clicked against the hardwood as I walked to the stage, steady and deliberate. Behind me, I heard Daniel's strangled "Mom." But I was already there. Already holding the microphone. Good evening, everyone. My voice was clear, calm. For those who don't know me, I'm Alicia Cansler. Daniel's mother. Madeline's sponsor. Confused laughter rippled through the crowd. I won't take much of your time. I know you're here to celebrate. But I wanted to share something with you all. A little background on tonight's venue, and the life we're celebrating. I pulled a small remote from my clutch. Behind me, the projector screen, set up for the planned photo montage of Madeline's life, flickered to life. Daniel was moving toward the stage now, but Uncle Henry, bless him, stepped into his path, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. The first slide appeared, a spreadsheet. This, I said, is a complete accounting of my financial contributions to Daniel and Madeline's household over the past 10 years. The room went deadly quiet. Down payment assistance, $62,000. Renovations, $30,450. Medical and childcare, $18,600. Various loans, all marked as temporary, $27,800. I clicked to the next slide. Here are the text messages. Mom, hate to ask but we need help with the daycare deposit. Mom, you're a lifesaver, can you cover the property tax? Mom, just until my commission comes through. Click. This is the Facebook post from last fall. So proud of our home. Built from love and hard work. No mention of the $187,000 that actually built it. Just love and hard work. Madeline's face had gone white. Patricia looked like she'd swallowed glass. Click. And this is particularly interesting. The bank notification of ownership transfer. The one that removed my name from the deed of the house I helped purchase. Filed without my knowledge or consent. Murmurs now. Shocked whispers. Someone near the back said, "Oh my God." Daniel told me it was for tax purposes. That it was temporary. That I was overreacting. I paused, letting the silence build. And then there's this. I pressed play. Daniel's voice filled the room, crystal clear through the sound system. She's not really part of our home anymore. She just sponsors it. The gasp was collective. Audible. Like the room itself had inhaled. Madeline made a small, wounded sound. Daniel stood frozen, face drained of color. That, I said quietly, was recorded at a family dinner 6 weeks ago. Through an open window. I wasn't meant to hear it. But then again, I wasn't meant to be family. Just a sponsor. Mrs. Cansler, Madeline found her voice, shaking but defiant. That's out of context. Daniel didn't mean. Didn't mean what? That I'm not family? That my contributions were just financial transactions? I looked directly at her. Madeline, you posted a photo of a house I helped build and called it hard work. You sat in my chair and told me I'd done enough. You removed me from legal documents and called it tax planning. Tell me, what context makes that acceptable? She had no answer. I turned back to the crowd. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here to reclaim my narrative. For 10 years, I let my love be mistaken for weakness. I let generosity become obligation. I let myself be erased from a story I funded. I clicked to the final slide, the original trust documents, Richard's signature visible at the bottom. But here's what they forgot: my late husband was a careful man. When we set up our estate, he made sure that any major property I contributed to would maintain my legal ownership stake. It was his way of protecting me. Uncle Henry stepped forward then, pulling folded documents from his jacket. "I have the originals," he announced, his voice carrying across the stunned room. "Complete with notarized signatures. Alicia Cansler is listed as legal co-owner of 847 Willow Creek Drive, with 33% equity based on initial capital contribution. Any transfer of ownership without her written consent is fraudulent." The room erupted. Voices overlapping. Guests pulling out phones. Someone saying, "I can't believe this." Madeline grabbed Daniel's arm. "You said she wasn't on the deed. You said." "I thought," the lawyer said. Daniel looked lost, young suddenly, like a child caught in a lie he'd convinced himself was true. I descended from the stage, walking through the crowd that parted like water. At the gift table, piled high with wrapped boxes in emerald and gold, I placed a bound document. My complete financial ledger. 147 pages. Every transaction. Every broken promise. I turned back to face the room one final time. "You changed the locks," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Consider this my key." Then I walked out. Behind me, chaos. Raised voices. Madeline crying. Daniel calling, "Mom, wait." But I didn't wait. I walked through those glass doors, past the emerald ribbons and the ice sculptures and the champagne towers built on money that was partially mine. The valet brought my car. I tipped him $20. As I pulled away, I caught a glimpse of the party through the rearview mirror, the beautiful venue, the carefully curated guest list, the celebration imploding like a star. I'd promised Madeline it would be memorable. I'd kept that promise. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Free. Not happy, exactly. Not yet. But free. The lock had been changed. But I'd just changed the entire door. The silence lasted 3 days. 3 days of nothing. No calls. No texts. No frantic apologies or desperate explanations. Just silence, the kind that feels like held breath, like the moment before a storm breaks or a verdict is read. I spent those days in a strange, suspended calm. I watered my plants. I organized my closet. I made Earl Grey tea at exactly 7:30 each morning and sat in my breakfast nook watching the light change, waiting for something I couldn't quite name. On the 4th day, my phone lit up. 17 messages, all from Daniel. "Mom, please call me. We need to talk about what happened. You embarrassed us in front of everyone we know. Maddie's devastated. Her birthday is ruined. I know you're angry, but this was too far. Can we please just talk? Like adults?" I read them all. Felt nothing. Deleted none of them. Evidence, I'd learned, was important. The 18th message was different. "I'm sorry. For all of it. Please. Just tell me what you want." What I wanted. Such a simple question. Such an impossible answer. I wanted 10 years back. I wanted the son who'd promised to take care of me. I wanted the family I'd thought I was building, brick by financial brick. But you can't want things that never really existed. So I didn't reply. The lawyer called on day 6. "Mrs. Cansler, I've received a settlement proposal from Daniel's attorney." I set down my tea. Already? They're motivated. The exposure from the party has apparently caused complications. Several of their friends are attorneys. Others work in finance. The fraudulent deed transfer is now common knowledge in their social circle. Good. She paused. The proposal is for full repayment of your documented contributions. $187,624. Plus restoration of your name to the property deed with your original equity stake. In exchange for your silence. A signed NDA. Agreement not to pursue further legal action or discuss the matter publicly. I almost laughed. They want to buy my silence after I've already spoken. Essentially, yes. They're also offering a written apology. A written apology. I looked out my window at the oak tree in my yard, the one I'd planted with Richard 40 years ago, the one that had survived storms and seasons and the death of the man who'd helped me dig the hole. No. No to the settlement. No to the NDA. No to pretending this didn't happen. They can keep their apology. I paused. But I will accept full repayment. Not because I'm silencing myself. Because it's what I'm owed. And the property stake? I thought about that house. The marble counter. The oak door. The stone gate that kept me on the outside. They can have it, I said. I don't want to be attached to that property anymore. But they pay me the full equity value based on current market assessment. Not what I contributed. What it's worth now. That's significantly more. The property has appreciated considerably. I know. That's the point. I'm not a charity. I'm an investor. And investors expect returns. I could hear the smile in her voice. I'll make the counteroffer. The money arrived 2 weeks later. Not $187,624. $276,400. My original contributions plus equity appreciation minus the property stake buyout. No apology letter. No personal note. Just a wire transfer and a notarized document releasing me from all ownership claims. Clean. Transactional. Exactly what they'd reduced our relationship to. I sat at my desk, looking at the number on my screen, and felt something shift inside me. Not joy. Not vindication. Just completion. The story had ended. Not the way I'd wanted. But the way it needed to. I transferred half the money into a trust for Emma and Jackson. They were children. None of this was their fault. The rest I kept. And then I did something I hadn't done in 40 years. I planned a future that was entirely my own. I found the cottage in early May. A small weathered blue house on the coast, 3 hours from Daniels City. Close enough to have once been convenient. Far enough to make visiting require intention. It had a garden that had been neglected for years, vines climbing the fence in wild tangles. The paint was peeling. The porch sagged slightly. It was perfect. It needs work, the realtor warned. The previous owner passed away. Her children just want it sold. I'll take it. Don't you want to see the inside first? I looked at the front door, painted yellow, with a small window at the top that caught the afternoon light. My door. My lock. My key. I've seen enough. I moved in on a Tuesday. Not much to bring. I'd sold most of my furniture, too many memories attached to pieces Daniel had picked out, meals I'd hosted, holidays that had slowly excluded me. I kept my mother's roll-top desk. Richard's watch. My pearls. Everything else I started fresh. I painted the cottage myself. Soft cream for the walls. Sage green for the kitchen. The bedroom a pale blue that reminded me of early morning sky. In the garden, I planted things I'd always wanted but never had room for, lavender and roses and herbs that would grow wild if I let them. I bought an easel and oil paints, something I hadn't touched since before Daniel was born, when I'd had time for things that weren't motherhood or widowhood or performative generosity. I painted the ocean. The garden. The light coming through the yellow door. I painted myself back into existence. The apologies continued for weeks. Voicemails from Daniel. Emails from Madeline. A letter from Patricia that managed to be both apologetic and condescending. We all handled this poorly, but surely you can understand how shocking your actions were. I read them all. Responded to none. What was there to say? I'd already said everything that mattered on that stage, in front of everyone they'd wanted to impress. The rest was just noise. Uncle Henry visited in late June. He arrived with a bottle of wine and a knowing smile, settling into one of my porch chairs like he'd always belonged there. Nice place. Thank you. Daniel know you moved? I assume his lawyer told him. Henry nodded, looking out at the ocean. He called me, you know. Asked if I'd talk to you. Smooth things over. And? I told him some things can't be smoothed over. Only learned from. He glanced at me. How are you, Alicia? Really? I thought about it. About the silence in my cottage that felt like peace instead of loneliness. About the garden that grew according to my choices. About mornings where I didn't check my phone hoping for acknowledgement from someone who'd learned to take me for granted. I'm good, I said. Actually good. Not pretending good. That's all Richard ever wanted for you. To be actually good. I know. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink toward the water. You did the right thing, Henry said finally. It took courage. Richard would have been proud. Would he? He spent our whole childhood protecting me from people who tried to take advantage. He would have protected you from Daniel too, if he could have. Since he couldn't. Henry raised his wine glass. I'm glad you protected yourself. We toasted. To Richard. To survival. To the complicated mathematics of love and money and family. To knowing when to walk away. The final message came in September. I was in the garden, dirt under my fingernails, my hair pulled back with the kind of casual disregard I'd never allowed myself when I was performing perfection for my son. My phone buzzed. Daniel. Mom. I know you probably won't respond. But I need to say this. I hope you can forgive us someday. We never meant to hurt you. We got lost. I got lost. And I'm sorry. I read it 3 times. Heard the sincerity. Recognized the pain. And felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No desire to punish or absolve. Just distance. I typed back, I already did. I just didn't forget. Then I blocked his number. Not from cruelty. From completion. Forgiveness, I'd learned, doesn't require reconciliation. You can forgive someone and still choose not to let them back into your life. You can release the anger without reopening the door. That evening, I made tea. Earl Grey. 2 sugars. The same as always. But I took it out to the porch this time, wrapped in one of Richard's old sweaters that still smelled faintly of him, and watched the sun rise over water that belonged to no one and everyone. My cottage sat behind me, small, imperfect, entirely mine. My door. My lock. My key. No one could change these locks without my permission. No one could make me wait outside in the cold. No one could erase my name from something I'd built with my own hands, my own choices, my own reclaimed life. I thought about Daniel. About the house I'd helped him buy. About the locks he'd changed and the boundaries he'd drawn and the family he'd built that had no room for the woman who'd financed it. And I realized something, I didn't need room in his story anymore. Because I'd finally made room in my own. Somewhere in the cottage, my phone buzzed. Another message, probably. Another apology or explanation or attempt to rewrite the past. I didn't check it. Instead, I sipped my tea and watched the light change, gold to pink to that particular blue that only exists at the edge of morning, and I smiled. Not from happiness, exactly. From recognition. Of a woman who'd survived loss and betrayal and the particular heartbreak of loving someone more than they loved her back. A woman who'd stopped performing worth and started living it. A woman who'd learned the difference between being needed and being valued. A woman who'd finally come home. To herself. Later, when the sun was fully up and the day had officially begun, I stood at my yellow front door and ran my fingers over the lock. Solid. New. Mine. I whispered to the empty morning, to Richard's memory, to the version of myself that had sat outside her son's house waiting for permission to belong. They changed the locks. I turned the key, stepped inside, and closed the door gently behind me. I changed the story. And for the first time in 10 years, I knew exactly where I belonged. Right here. In the life I'd finally stopped building for someone else. In the peace I'd finally stopped believing I didn't deserve. In the home that had always been waiting. The one I'd had to lose everything to find.